Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dan Knows Everything About Sports. I am your host, Dan. This is the podcast where I, your host, try to prove to you, probably very poorly, especially today, where I am just brain farting like crazy and having a blank on a lot of things, because it's just one of those days, folks, when you wake up and you have 1,000 things to do, you just get overwhelmed, and all of them kind of blend together. Very poorly, I might make my points today, but this is that podcast where I try to convince you that I know exactly what I'm talking about, even though I might not. But hey, thank you for listening anyway, as I try to make these points. Today, what are we talking about? Ole, 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 ole. It is the World Cup quarterfinals. The final 8 teams. Final ocho teams, baby. That's what we're talking about in this beautiful World Cup, this expanded 32-team knockout bracket that we've seen here in America for this just amazing World Cup. A few controversies along the way. We'll get to that today. But overall, we will be talking and breaking down where we stand on the final 8 teams, who's going to make the semis, giving you a quick update if you haven't been paying attention. But if you have been paying attention, hey, we're welcome for your comments too down in the section below. But these 8 teams, these 8 countries, these 8 passionate fan bases that we're going to be talking about are all right now, they're all staking their claims for who's going to the semis. Some probably believe they're going to finally touch that beautiful golden trophy and stake that claim for the next 4 years that they have the best international squad in the entire world. That they won the 2026 Copa Mundial. Okay, for those of you who habla español. But in reality, each one of these teams is probably one bad pass away from just having a complete emotional collapse and setting some trash cans on fire. But here's how the bracket breaks down right now. Like I said, in this amazing expanded bracket, on one side, you have the defending runner-up and a team that has made 3 finals since 2006. France going up against this amazing up-and-coming team out of Africa, Morocco. The winner of that will play the winner of what has slowly become a big favorite, maybe even the odds-on favorite in this tournament. The 2010 winners of this tournament, España, Spain, taking on those Red Devils of Belgium. The winner of that will see the winner of France versus Morocco. On the other side, some interesting developments as well, where England will take on, I gotta do it here, those upstart Norwegians, with Haaland leading the way against an English squad who, let's be fair, England, this is what happens. What's the saying? It's the hope that will kill you. We'll get into that a little bit later on in this podcast. England versus Norway. Winner of that in that bracket will play the winner of the defending champions who just pulled out a miraculous win. Argentina against, where did they come from? Switzerland, making it deep into this tournament. And that's your final 8. France, Morocco, Spain, Belgium, England, Norway, Argentina, and Switzerland. One of these teams is going to be the champion of the 2026 World Cup. So today, let's go team by team. Let's look at how they got here through their group play, how they survived in that round of 32, how they got through the round of 16. And we're going to break down each matchup and make maybe a little bit of prediction that I may deny in the next video that I make, that I got it wrong or I got it right. But let's start with what will probably be one of the biggest dogfights in the next round. Let's talk France and Morocco. Let's look at France. Okay, France coming to this tournament as one of the favorites, maybe even the odds-on favorite, depending on who you ask, because of course they did. And France is basically, at this point, they are a factory that produces world-class players. And somewhere in France, there's probably a backup left back who would be the best player on about 6 or 7 other countries, but they're a backup in France. They were in Group I. They got lumped in with Senegal, Iraq, and a Norwegian team that has also survived from that group and is also playing in the quarterfinals. And right away, they looked like that team that, you know what, they understood the assignment, and they understood, hey, we're going to come here, and we may have lost on penalties in Qatar in 2022 to Lionel Messi, but you know what? We're coming in here with a statement win. And I will say, it basically was a statement win. They start off 3-1 to get that win over Senegal. It wasn't a completely easy first game. Senegal, very athletic, physical. They were organized. They are not that kind of team that you want to face if you're trying to, get into a tournament rhythm because, like we saw throughout the World Cup, Senegal, they can push you a little bit. But France handled it, and they got that win. They showed their attacking quality. They reminded everybody in that opening win, hey, we're going to get this ball rolling and we're going to completely punish you very quickly if you allow us to overwhelm you with our attack. Then they go on and face Iraq. And listen, did anybody think Iraq was going to, have a snowball's chance in hell against France? Because no, they didn't. 3-0 with that win. It was the kind of win that, when you're a favorite, it just says, hey, we're better than you. We know we're better than you. And we're going to keep it a clean sheet also and show you that, hey, look at the scoreboard at the end of this, because it was 3-0, no drama, no panic. I mean, they controlled the entire performance, and I'm pretty sure if they were a little bit more motivated, it would have been a 6-0 victory, but hey, they settled for 3-0. And then came Norway, which was supposed to be the first real test of France in this tournament. And yeah, that told us something a little bit different, because France came out against this Norwegian team who's kind of been the hipster pick, and Norway, as we know, they're not some random team. I mean, they are led by Erling Haaland, and they beat them 4-1, took them down. They weren't some random team that accidentally wandered into the knockout stage. Norway is here in the quarterfinals, folks, along with France, and they handled them 4-2-1. And that's how they finished their group play, looking like one of the most complete team probably in this tournament. And then came that round of 32, going up against Sweden, and again, ruthless. Sweden, usually organized, stubborn, they're tough to break down. France made it look simple. They made it look easy. Okay, Sweden, this is their first World Cup without the great and probably one of the best strikers of all time in Zlatan. But Sweden, they had no Zlatan, and it showed that they may have needed a Zlatan. They got handled 3-0 in that opening round of 32. And then came Paraguay. And I have a take on this, and I usually don't. But let's get through this. Round of 16. Paraguay, completely different story from every other game that they have played so far, because it wasn't flashy. It wasn't an easy. It was the kind of game that fills up. It didn't fill up any highlight reels or anything like that. But honestly, it was an impressive win considering the optics of that game. 4th of July in Philadelphia. The field temperature at field level, folks. Now, we're going to go off the American Fahrenheit system here. You want to break it down into Celsius, that's for you. The field temperature peaked at 107 degrees. That is brutal. But even worse, the actual grass field temperature, meaning what the pitch itself peaked at from the sun hitting it. And this is why they had to implement these hydration breaks, because of a historic heat wave coming in. The grass temperature at one point during the game peaked at 157 degrees Fahrenheit. That, you can cook with that. That is how hot that field was at one point. So the weather definitely playing a factor in the game of attrition. But Paraguay came out, and here's my take on this game. I think Paraguay showed you the roadmap for how to just frustrate France and how to slow them down and how to keep them during normal play off of the scoreboard and keep the game close, which is they just played like dogs. They were aggressive with Kylian Mbappe, with many of the other attackers, many of the other players on France. They were just beating the hell out of them. You may consider it dirty tactics. Some might say, there's no call for tactics like that in a game. But when you are a small nation like Paraguay, who you snuck in to the round of 16, by the way, many people look at that because of their upset of Germany. You have to play to your strengths and hide your weaknesses. And that's what they did. Unfortunately, it did catch up with them. And I'm not going to go into the discussion in this of what some Paraguayan senator had to say about Kylian Mbappe after the game, because I'm here to tell you I condemn it as well. And that woman should just shut the hell up, or shut the bleep up. Whatever she wants to take it in her own way. It was uncalled for what was said to Kylian Mbappe after that game. But just looking at the game on a whole, Paraguay just gave you the roadmap if you want to keep them off the scoreboard. Frustrate them, get physical with them, because the only reason why Paraguay loses that game is because, unfortunately, they went a little too far. They got caught, a penalty was awarded, and Kylian Mbappe made them pay. like he will, because he is one of the best scorers in the world, not just in whichever league he is currently playing in. Right now it's La Liga. Before that, playing in his home country of France for PSG. Whichever league he goes into, whichever game he is in, he is the most deadly striker on the pitch. But they came out with the win, and you're not going to blow everyone out in this tournament. I understand that, but what might be more impressive is even though Paraguay did give you the roadmap to beat them, okay, France endured, and that's what the mark of a champion is. So you're not going to, like I said, blow everybody out, and at some point you do need an ugly win. This was their ugly win. Now, you need to defend, you need to stay patient, and you need to have another big moment, and I think France did that. So they are dangerous. They can win either 4-1, they can win 3-0. Like they said, they just won 1-0. They can beat you with style, and they can beat you with a wrench and a hard hat, baby. They have shown that. To me right now, odds-on favorite, it's not Argentina, it's not Spain, it is France, and it's France for a reason. So right now, they're looking good. But let's talk about who they got to face. They're going up against Morocco. Ooh, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Morocco, back in the quarterfinals for their second straight World Cup. And Morocco has been one of those teams nobody wants to play. And here's why. They are the football version of getting a flat tire on the way to the airport. It's going to be annoying and stressful and much harder than it absolutely should be to deal with. But it's going to be, because that's how they play. Now, let's look at them and how they got here. Started in Group C, in a group with Brazil and Haiti, and let's give a shout out to the Tottenham Army, baby. Scotland was in that. And just quickly and very briefly, the Tottenham Army, kudos to you. I haven't said this yet on this podcast. I know it's been talked about at length for weeks, but to go into Boston, forget what happened on the pitch. I know they didn't qualify for the knockout round. I know they went home early. But to the Tottenham Army, I want you to know something as an American. Of all the places that I could not believe could run out of beer in this world, you would have thought that when the Tottenham Army marched into the brewery of Sam Adams in Boston, that it was not physically possible for them to run out of beer because of all of the places that I thought on this planet you couldn't drink it dry would be where the damned beer is made. But you know what? Scottish fans, you proved me wrong, and for that, I say thank you. But anyway, getting back to Morocco, after, breaking down who was in that group, they opened up a 1-1 draw against Brazil. And right there, Morocco told everyone with that first game. There was questions about Brazil coming into this game. There was a lot of talk about the health of Neymar, if Vinny Jr. was going to take the next step and really start leading Brazil. But Morocco comes out 1-1 draw, showing everybody that 2022 run was real. And no, we're not going to go away. They held Brazil to that draw, and that, it's a massive result, whether you think so or not. As someone who has become more and more of an international football fan over the years, it tells me and it tells the rest of the group, Morocco is not here to just be a participant. They're here to be a problem for you, and they're not going to let you just open the field up and think you can run past their defenders and just start scoring at will. It's not going to happen. Then they beat Scotland 1-0. Classic Moroccan result. Tight, controlled, disciplined. They didn't need to dominate the ball. They didn't always need to entertain you, but they're going to get the win. And you know what? Then here comes Haiti. Hi, Haiti. Thank you for coming. They beat them 4-2. It showed another side of them, too, because Morocco, they're not just a defensive team. They can open up the scoring if they want to. They can score when they need to, and they can create chances. And they can turn a game into a track meet, and you are not going to catch them if they are motivated enough. So they get the draw, they get the 2 wins, they get their 7 points in the group stage, they move on. And who is waiting there for them? Whoa, arguably, probably, on paper, of all the opening matchup games in the round of 32, this was the one that I'm going to be honest with you, I got wrong. I know I got wrong. I know a lot of people that got this wrong, which was that Netherlands team, that Dutch team. Man, the Dutch are always, it seems like these past couple World Cups, they're always in the thick of things, aren't they? They are always in the thick of things. And to be fair, and I do mean this, in the 2022 World Cup, this is the team that went up against Argentina and they lost an ugly game that was just filled with yellow cards and controversy and tackles and fighting and the kind of drama that you just drizzle as a sports fan over pancakes and you soak up and enjoy. But Morocco drew Netherlands. And you knew that was going to be the dogfight matchup of that opening round. And it was. They drew 1-1, and Morocco advanced on penalties. They didn't win in normal time. They didn't win in extra time. It came down to our 5 best versus your 5 best, and Morocco pulled it out in a stunner, sent the Dutch team home, and the Dutch team were favored to win that game. They are comfortable being in uncomfortable games. Penalties, pressure, a European power that's right across them. They didn't blink and they moved on. And then and what is their reward? What's their reward for winning in the round of 32? It's going and facing Canada. And let me pause for a second before I continue and just point this out to all 3 of the host nations, the United States, Mexico, and Canada. I think we can all honestly say this. The Canadians getting to the round of 16 was basically their win for the entire tournament, because I don't think anybody had that Canadian team going any further than getting to the first round. But the fact that they actually made it past the first round and made it to the round of 16, that was already, good for you. Good for you. But also, thanks for coming. We'll see you later, because Morocco did what Morocco should have done when playing a team like Canada. 3-0, sent them home. Most impressive part of that run so far, because Canada was supposed to have the home crowd in that. They're supposed to have that energy and emotion. They lucked out. They ended up not playing in Canada like that game was supposed to end up being. And they ended up losing. And Morocco took all of that. They basically said, hey, that's cute. You're a host. Glad you came. Here's 3 goals on you. You're getting nothing. Bye-bye. And they knocked them out. Got a win against them. Took out the first host nation in this World Cup. And that's a team with confidence going into the next round. And that's what they needed. They didn't need an ugly win. They needed a big win. And they got that. So now you have France coming off of a game against a Paraguayan team that basically just spent the entire game smacking them around, kicking them, hurling them to the ground, playing with a lot of these tactics to just get under their skin and frustrate them. France played frustrated, and it showed. You have a frustrated, angry France team going up against a Morocco team that's trying to get to the semifinals for the first time, but also proving to everyone that 2022 run was not a fluke. They're trying to get back there, and France and Morocco, this is that rematch that we've all been wanting to see. Will Morocco pull off an upset this time? Because France, you have to believe, is going to be the favorite in this matchup. And stylistically, it's going to be fascinating. France is probably here. They're going to have more of the ball. They're probably going to want to create more chances. They're probably going to want to have that more individual match winner over and over, individual matchups that they think they can win and get the ball into the box and drive it on home. Obviously, the offensive focus is probably going to be around Mbappe. I don't see why it would not. But Morocco is built for this exact kind of game. They can sit deep and they can frustrate with the best of them, and they will try to force France wide and try and call and make the game uncomfortable. And if France gets impatient, Morocco absolutely has the team that they can counter them and make them pay. But the key is going to be for France scoring first. I truly believe if France can score early and not play from behind, Morocco has to, they can jump on them, but Morocco has to open up. And that is where France becomes terrifying, because the key for Morocco is going to be keeping this game scoreless for as long as possible and finding your moment to make France pay. Maybe frustrate them. Maybe if it gets deeper into this game, then it's 0-0 after halftime and Morocco starts playing with that vigor and that fight that we have seen them in the past play with. They can make them pay. They can absolutely make them pay and park the bus and hold them off. But Morocco will start to bleed more and more and more if they can make them think, if it gets to 0-0 at halftime, oh, hey, woof, this is going to be a dogfight. And I anticipate it being. I don't see why it wouldn't be at this point of the tournament. I don't think you're going to get, and I do mean this, in jest. Sorry if I'm offending any Brazilian fans out there. I don't think this is a Germany versus Brazil result. I don't think France is going to come out and put 7 on Morocco before they get a very nice gentleman's goal. That's not going to happen here. This is going to be a dogfight, and I am here for it. But I'm taking France anyway. I have to. My prediction, if I'm being completely honest here, if Morocco can't get that ball into the box and they can't score early, I truly do think this is going to come down to not penalties, but I think we're going to go into extra time. I say at the end of 90 minutes, we're at 1-1 and it goes into extra time. And I think we get a thrilling, key World Cup signature moment from Kylian Mbappe, whether it be like we saw in the Paraguay game, whether it be from a penalty or just from a corner kick late in the game. I think France pulls it out. 2-1, France over Morocco. The cup favorites moving on into the semis. Now, moving on to who they might face in the semis. You've got Spain versus Belgium. You've got España and the Red Devils meeting. But let's start with Spain. They were in Group H against Saudi Arabia, against an underperforming Uruguay, and an upstart nation. Probably the fan favorite nation of this World Cup. Cape Verde out of Africa. The tournament actually started with a bit of frustration against that Cape Verde team because many thought Spain was supposed to come out against a team like Cape Verde, who, let's be clear, forget Americans. I think most people across the continental globe had no idea where Cape Verde was or also that you existed. Sorry, Cape Verde. Not a very big nation. You're an island archipelago off of the coast of Africa. But wow, the stunner of the group stage, really. Cape Verde coming out and drawing 0-0, holding off Spain. And after that game, you could hear the panic starting with some of the pundits, with some of the fans, that Spain had that ball. They had that technical quality. They had control, but man, they could not get a goal past that goalkeeper. Cape Verde's goalkeeper at 40 years old. 41? 40? What is he? He is 4 decades into his life. And that man stood on his head and probably had the goalkeeper performance of this World Cup. But that did cause, that caused some concern with Spain. And sometimes they pass. And then you would think, wow, that is so beautiful. The ball control. Are they going to shoot it? Don't shoot the ball. Share it. Pass it again. That's the Spain way. But then they responded exactly how you would want a contender to completely respond. They take Saudi Arabia, metaphorically speaking, out to the woodshed like old Yeller, and my God, did they put them down. 4-0, and that's when they looked at everybody, threw their hands up, and said, hey, everybody, okay, chill, all right, we got this. We're going to put 4 goals on Saudi Arabia. You're going to have hope in us again. And they kept it clean, 4-0. They found that rhythm. They reminded people that, hey, when Spain is clicking, they will suffocate you with possession. They will slice you open, and they will absolutely take advantage of the fact that you let them open the scoring up. Then they go up against, to be fair, one of the biggest disappointments in this World Cup, Uruguay. They did not play like Uruguay usually plays. And they beat them 1-0. And that was important because Uruguay's physical. Man, they're intense at times. Looking at some of the great players that have played for them, I mean, they like to take a bite out of people. And that's not just a Suarez joke. I mean, it is, but it also is just indicative of their play. They will take a bite out of you. And they're usually not going to let you play pretty soccer without making you earn it. But Spain won anyway. And that was their group stage. 2 wins and a draw, not bad. Another 7-point team. They come out of their group stage with a little bit of everything. Some frustration, some dominance, a tough 1-goal win. It's a great story to tell. And then they go in to the round of 32, and man, was this a fun one if you're a Spain fan. They go up against Austria, who was the last team to qualify for the knockout stage out of all the, third place teams, scoring in probably the most dramatic series of events of the group stage, where they come back and they score with literally 2 seconds left in time to go to a draw and qualify. And what do they get in return? They got a 3-0 beating from Spain. And that felt like Spain found another gear because it was a knockout game. And that can be tense, but Spain just controlled it. And they turned it up and they got a nice, comfortable win. And then came the Portugal game. Man, that's a massive result. Tip of the hat, whether you like him or not, Ronaldo, the great Cristiano Ronaldo, his career ends internationally with Portugal. This is the last World Cup he will ever participate in. I mean, he's in his 40s. You didn't think he would possibly come back at, 45 years old and play one more time. But, Portugal had talent everywhere, and Spain found a way to get through it. Mirko Moreno got the winner. Spain reaches the quarterfinals for the first time since they won the whole tournament back in 2010. And that matters because Spain has been carrying the weight of its own history. Ever since that 2010 team, Spain's teams get compared to it. And sometimes it's fair and sometimes it is not. But sports overall is not fair. And sports basically it's just group therapy with a scoreboard. That's what most sporting events are. But that's how the Spain team looks, and they're starting to believe. And you have to believe that the team that they're going to face is going to be concerned about playing Spain and trying to maintain possession from Spain, which is a tough task to do. Now, for Belgium, their opponent, in their group stage, they had Egypt, Iran, and New Zealand. An extremely winnable group, if you ask me. But they start off with a 1-1 draw against Egypt, and it's not a disaster, but it's not exactly a statement either, Then they draw 0-0 with Iran, and at that point, people are wondering, wow, man, can Belgium not keep up anymore? Are they that old? Are all of their players getting that long in the tooth? Are you starting to think with Belgium, have we been talking about their golden generation for so long that the golden generation has pretty much gone into a golden retirement plan? But then their final group stage, they play a very beatable New Zealand team, and they do beat them 5-1. That was an awakening. Belgium finally looked like Belgium. Their attacking was open. They finished when they needed to. They had a confidence boost out of that game. And then the round of 32 comes, and we are going to get into these next two games because Belgium is an interesting squad. Ranked 9th internationally. They're a top 10 international team, but again, they're an elder statesman team. You don't know if they're going to be able to compete with the younger, faster teams. And Senegal showed that in the round of 32 that, hey, we respect the players that you have. We respect the kind of football you have played with your golden generation, okay? We respect you, Red Devils, but we are not going to let you just come in here and think that because you are playing Senegal that it's going to be easy, because Senegal, they were athletic. They were dangerous. They were capable of making life miserable. And midway through that game, you had to think, if you were watching it, that Belgium's going to lose to Senegal. We are going to get an upset in this opening round. Belgium's going home. Another African nation is going to make a run outside of Morocco. This is going to be fantastic. But Belgium ends up pulling through 3-2 after extra time. It's a serious win. They had to survive. Belgium had to fight against Senegal, and they had to show that they still had legs because it did not look early on that they had any. But they're reluctant, they're resilient, and they get through. And then we come to the game that was such a complete unmitigated disaster for the United States that I had to do an entire podcast on it recently. Check it out on our YouTube page if you get the time. I think I have some good takes in there. And before I talk about this, I have to get this because I didn't address it too much in that podcast with the U.S. As I'm going through this, I have to talk about this. The red card situation. Okay. Just touching on it briefly. Belgium had every right to receive an explanation from FIFA about the red card situation with the United States because was that a red card? No. Honestly, it wasn't a red card. It was not a red card offense. It should have never been called a red card. If you want to give him a yellow card, give him the yellow card. That's fine. But to jump right to red and to send him off and him to be suspended, it should have never happened from the get-go. However, for FIFA to come in and do something they have never done in their entire history, I side with you, Belgium, as an American fan. As just a soccer/football fan, I agree 1,000% with everyone's take on this, that America, for some reason, out of every other country who has hosted the World Cup in recent memory, America somehow can bully the unbullyable, corrupt organization that is FIFA. And if you think I'm wrong, understand this, folks, if you're an American listening to this podcast. FIFA has literally gone into South Africa and Brazil in the last 16 years, and they have changed laws. They have changed the laws of countries to fit their needs. There were people in South Africa that FIFA had kangaroo courts set up. If you got caught, you went to jail that day and started your sentence that day. That is the type of things you see in Cuba. Hell, in Brazil in 2014, FIFA pressured Brazil to overturn a law about beer consumption in stadiums during matches because there were too many riots and deaths associated with alcohol consumption. But Budweiser needed there to be Budweiser at the World Cup in Brazil, and that's why that got overturned. So for the Belgians to ask for just a simple explanation for, hey, the United States president is coming out and saying, I asked you guys to review this, and you guys decided to do that for the first time ever, when FIFA has never overturned a red card like that this late in the tournament and overturned a suspension, was just baffling. But you know what Belgium did? Do you know what they did? The U.S. had the crowd. They were the home crowd. They were the last remaining host nation. They had the momentum, if you were led to believe that. People thought the U.S. had real belief that they could beat an older Belgian squad. And did that happen? Nope. No, it didn't. Belgium took the U.S. to the wood chipper. Forget the wood shed. The wood chipper, baby, and threw them in head first, a la Steve Buscemi. Because that wasn't just a win, that was a statement. That was, oh, you have hope? You're not going to give us an explanation? You guys are going to have your president turn around and try to get you your number one goal scorer back and all this, blah, blah, blah. Okay, overturn this, to quote them, 4-1. That makes Belgium dangerous because they didn't put their golden generation on until late in the game, and they made the U.S. pay. And you know what? That's where they're at right now in the tournament, moving on to face Spain. And maybe they're peaking right at the right time. Who knows? But Spain versus Belgium, it's going to be a great contest, whether you think so or not. Spain's going to want control. Belgium's going to want moments. You know, Spain is really going to want the possession, and Belgium is going to want the transition. Spain is going to want to slowly drag you into deep waters where they will drown you and just get their goals when they need to, and you will be done. And Belgium is going to want to hit you with a speedboat. The big question is whether Belgium can handle Spain's midfield. That's going to be the big question. If Belgium can spend 50 minutes chasing the ball, they are going to get tired real fast. And that's when teams get tired, that Spain usually finds gaps and exploits it. Spain is going to make Belgium run. Make no question about that. They are going to pass that ball probably 300 times like they normally do. They are going to hold on to the possession of that ball. They're going to make Belgium work for it. And, you know, Belgium's going to try to find enough quality to try and make them pay. But if Spain, you know, turns the ball over in bad air, I can see Belgium making a play for it and making a big play and making, you know, basically chicken salad out of chicken you-know-what. And I think it might be close, but then again, at the way this is going, and this might come back to haunt me like my Netherlands pick early on in the tournament has. But I have a bold prediction. I have Spain taking down Belgium 2-0. I have Spain getting a goal early, holding on to the ball, coming out of halftime, getting another quick goal, parking the bus, and just holding on to possession. And I think Belgium will get their scoring chances, but Spain has yet to concede a goal in this tournament. They are the only team left, and I don't see them conceding a goal for some reason in this game. I truly think Spain has the younger blood. They have the younger legs. And unlike playing the U.S. or even, you know, playing against Senegal, this isn't that type of team. This is a team that they've gone deep into the Euros recently. They've won. This is a championship caliber squad. I have Spain 2-0, which would give us France versus Spain in the semifinal, which, as ridiculous as it sounds, that sounds more like a final than an actual semifinal, which is nothing more than pleasure for us as fans, and it's going to be contemptible stress for France and Spain fans. But that's that side of the bracket. Now let's move on to the other side of the bracket, because we have to get into this. England versus Norway. Let's look at England. You know, there's no, as we talk about England, English fans, how you doing? We've been here before. Isn't it great? This is usually that time of year in the World Cup where English fans are either about to lose their minds from the thrill of victory, or they're going to go want to drown their sorrows in the nearest pub and fight each other due to the agony of defeat. Because it can't be a major tournament, in my opinion. No major tournament is complete without England making its fans experience every single last human emotion that is humanly possible, and then some that they didn't know they had over a 3-week span. Am I right? England was in Group L. Croatia, Ghana, and Panama. They opened up with a 4-2 win over Croatia, and that's a great result. Croatia had been a tournament machine for years, being led by the great Luka Modric. They know how to suffer, though, and they know how to drag games into weird places. England scoring 4 against them was a very strong opening statement for me, but then we had the stunner, and this is where I'm talking about the wave of human emotion that is English fans, because then they come out against Ghana, and the Ghana team, this still cracks me up every time I talk about it. Ghana decided to pull out a legit African witch doctor in the crowd who put a curse, a hex, so to speak, on Harry Kane from scoring a goal. Apparently it worked that day. Maybe some of the dust he was blowing somehow found its way into Harry Kane or Jude Bellingham's eyes, because they drew nothing. And it was a classic England weeble wobble, like, hey, we started off good, but now we're going to make you sweat a little bit if you're rooting for us. And that game is where everybody starts asking, man, are they too slow? Is this midfield okay? Is the manager overthinking it? Why does this always happen to us? But then they turn around, they beat Panama 2-0. Nothing spectacular, but solid. They go through the group, they handled business, and they moved into the knockouts like they should have. And they beat Congo, and that wasn't easy. Congo made them work for it. They really did, but England survived. They kept calm, and they carried on. And I salute you for it. But let's talk about their last round. Let's talk about that round of 16 game. Because, folks, I don't care if you're a soccer fan. I don't care if you're a football fan. I don't care what you call it. I don't care if you think it's too boring of a game to watch. I don't care if you honestly in your heart of hearts think that the NFL is the epitome of real football. I don't care what your opinion is on sports. England versus Mexico is the type of game you make a Hollywood movie about. Okay, the Mexican national team had home field advantage. They were a host nation, one of the three, because all three of them went out in the round of 16, but this one has to be the shocking of it all. Let me paint the picture for you if you don't already know. Mexico, in Mexico City. You're playing at Estadio Azteca, one of the greatest football stadiums in the world, probably the most intimidating, because that Mexican crowd is ravenous. They get on you. They're whistling at you. They're chanting gigolo in Spanish at you, which is offensive, and FIFA's asked them to stop multiple times, but they continue to do it. They're staying up late at night. They're behind, they're in front, they're side, they're up, they're in front of that team hotel, just lighting off fireworks, honking horns, keeping the teams awake at night. And what does England do in that ravenous environment that is 7 miles above sea level, where it is hard to breathe, where there is so much contamination in the air, there is a level of smog around at all times? That ravenous crowd, they come out and they punch that team in the mouth and go up 2-0 on 2 consecutive goals by Jude Bellingham. That header by Jude Bellingham in that game, outside of the Cape Verde goal in extra time, that is probably the goal of the tournament, because what a header by Bellingham. And they got that crowd angry going up 2-0. But Mexico fought back. It was a chaotic game. And much of it was played in the second half. And the fact that England, not only do they go up 2-0, they respond after a Mexican goal and go up 3-1 before Mexico pulls it close. And England played much of the second half with only 10 men. How about that for Hollywood drama? And that's the kind of win that can change the tournament. But England, their teams have not always been known to survive chaos. And they walked into chaos and immediately went, thank you, let's start rearranging the furniture while the room is still on fire. And by the time they found a way, and that's all that matters, they were in the quarterfinals for the third straight World Cup. And that tells you their program is consistent now, and they may not have won a big one yet, but they have hung around long enough and have a puncher's chance of making it to a semifinal. But who's in their way? Norway. Norway. Every time. Hang on. Gotta do it. Row. 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 Norway rowing their way into the quarterfinals. In a group with France, Senegal, and Iraq, and we'll just cover that quickly. Opened up with a 4-1 win over Iraq. Perfect start. Goals, confidence. Reminds you that Norway is not just Erling Haaland and 10 guys wearing the same shirt, but a team that can make you pay when they need to. They got those young legs. They're going to use them. Then they beat Senegal 3-2, which wasn't huge, but Senegal, like we've seen, they're tough. The Senegalese can play. And Norway showed that they could win a game that required more than just talent and talent alone. They could handle the pressure, and they had to finish their chances, and they did that, and they survived. But then came that France game. Ugh. France beat them like dogs, and that could have broken Norway's spirit. And sometimes a loss like that can expose a team, and you're going into later on into tournaments, and it's something tells everybody like, nice story and everything, cool jerseys, you're the hip young, the hipster pick to go deep. But you know what? I don't think you guys are ready yet, so row on back home to Scandinavia. And instead, Norway responded. They go up against the Ivory Coast. Tough, physical opponent. Another close game. They pull out the 2-1 victory. Another Norway win. And then they got to roll on into the 16 to face Brazil in a game where, Brazil didn't have a lot of hype going into this tournament. And I feel like ever since 2014 and the way that Brazil was picked apart at home against Germany, 7-1, their most embarrassing loss internationally to date. Going, down 7-0 before you score a meaningless goal to make it, I guess, not, you got a gentleman's goal, if anything. Brazil has not had that hype around them like they've had in previous decades. Over the last 3 World Cups, they really have not performed to the level that everyone wants them to, but it's still Brazil. They have a litany of world-class players on that team. And you can say what you want about guys like Neymar and, a few of the other guys that draw criticism. It was still Brazil, and Brazil was still the favorite in this game. But they beat Brazil 2-1. Let me say that again. Norway beat Brazil 2-1. They were up 2-0 for most of that game. This is a game that if you are a Brazilian fan, you do not even care that Neymar scored with 90 seconds left in this game on that penalty and immediately ran his mouth because he scored so late in the game. The game was over prior to him taking that penalty kick because there was so little time left that you knew Norway was probably going to hold on to this. All they had to do was clear the ball once or twice and the game would be over, and that's exactly what happened. Norway handed them. And it's not just that result. It's the kind of result that gets shown in montages for the next 20 years because Erling Haaland scoring both of those goals because of course he did. Haaland scoring in a big game is like the sun coming up every day, water being wet, you inhaling lungs into your body, or FIFA just skirting the rules for money, okay? It's bound to happen, and it's probably gonna happen because it still feels dramatic when he does it, but man, when that guy wants to score, he is putting the ball at the back of that net. And now Norway is in its first ever World Cup quarterfinal, and they're not here by accident. Beating Senegal, beating Ivory Coast, beating Brazil. That's a good resume of any team that I've seen. And now you've got Norway, you've got England. This game is fascinating. This is going to be the game to watch because England is deeper, but Norway has the scariest individual weapon I have ever seen. England has a great army they have assembled, but Norway, pardon the just complete insinuation here. Norway has a howitzer, okay? They have the atom bomb that is Erling Haaland, and when he wants to, he will blow you up. England will likely look to control more of this game. They have more options. They have more ways to attack. They do. And they have a lot more experience. But again, Norway has that big, beautiful Viking of a man, Haaland. And in a knockout game, when it can come down to just one chance and that can change everything, Norway can equalize this. Do not count them out. Just ask Brazil what happens when you count them out. But the key for England is not letting Norway turn this game into a bunch of moments. England's going to need control. They're going to need discipline, and they cannot give away cheap pieces. They cannot lose control of Haaland for 1 second, because 1 second is all he is going to need to turn this game from 0-0 to 2-0. Just ask Brazil. The key for Norway is going to be keeping it close, though. If it's 1-1 late, England's going to feel the pressure, and Norway's going to start to believe. And if you don't think those Vikings are going to look up and see their fans rowing and not get some kind of confidence and belief that they can win this game, man, England fans watching will age approximately 30 years if this game is tied late. And I think it's going to be uncomfortable, and I think Haaland does get a goal, and I think, England's going to do just enough. But I think this game is going to shock everyone with what I think the score is going to be. I think it's 2-2. It goes into extra time. England wins 3-2. I think this is the game that if it's not 3-2 England in extra time, it's going to penalties. It's one of those. I can't make a singular prediction on this game because both of these teams are, they're really, really going to go at each other. And it's going to be the best game, in my opinion, of the quarterfinals. But I do believe England will move on. And yes, England fans, that is where the 4-letter word that every English fan hates to hear or start to want to buddy up to, and that is hope. Hope is going to enter the building, and be careful, because I know Hope has a terrible track record with English football. Again, it's the hope that kills you. But I don't think Hope is going to kill you this week, England. I think Hope is absolutely going to buddy up to you and be like, come on, mate, let's go into the semifinals. But now we get to the final matchup today that we're going to cover. Argentina versus Switzerland? Switzerland? Okay, let's start with Argentina. They were in Group J. Very winnable division. Let's be honest, a very winnable group. Pardon me. Extremely winnable group. Algeria, Austria, Jordan. Come on. Did you think anybody else was going to win that group? I mean, they are the defending champions. Lionel Messi has played in 2 finals. He's won one of them. He is on track. Right now, he thinks he's going to go to his 3rd one. And I will give you my reasoning why he may. But they opened up with a 3-0 win over Algeria. Classic statement win by Argentina. Looked sharp, confident, comfortable. Then they go on, they play Austria. Another 2-0 win. Clean win. Another controlled performance. And then they beat Jordan 3-1. They finish up group play. Perfect. They do concede a goal, but it's 3 straight wins, 8 goals scored, only 1 allowed. That's champion level group play, baby. So what? You gave up 1 goal. I don't even think Argentina knew they scored. I think they just kept scoring at will and were just like, whatever. But then came that Cape Verde game. Oh my God, this is the game of the tournament, folks. It's up there with Mexico and England. But the Mexico-England game is clearly my favorite game so far. But this game, my God, this game, intrigue, just dread, the agony of defeat, the joy, elation that you saw in this came out of a round of 32 game where you literally had the football version of Goliath going against what everybody thought would be an ass-kicking fest against David and Cape Verde. But Argentina, they do win the game 3-2 in extra time, but that was a warning sign because Cape Verde dug deep and they pushed Argentina, and that game went into extras, and Argentina took the lead, and Cape Verde came back and said, we're not making it that easy. We are here to fight and survive because no one thinks we can beat you. And they scored. Cape Verde scored, hands down, the prettiest goal I have seen all tournament against Argentina to knot that game up at 2. But again, championship pedigree. Argentina scores late. They survive. But that game was much trickier than they thought it was going to be. And then comes again. Oh, man. This isn't what Argentina thought this part of the bracket, this part of the group, coming out of the group stage would be. They go up against Egypt, and they're trailing 2-0. 2-0 against Egypt. Mohamed Salah looks like he is about to take the Egyptian team where they have never going deeper than they have ever been because they'd never even gotten a knockout win. And now it looks like they're about to get 2. because they are up 2-0 on the defending champs. And there was, at the 67-minute mark, less than 30 minutes in the game. That's absurd. But Argentina comes back. And that's the kind of game where if you're an Argentinian fan, you spend 75 minutes of this game, of this match, planning your emotional recovery, and then suddenly your team remembers, oh, wait a minute. Hey, wait, where's number 10? Don't we have Messi? They were getting killed. And then essentially Argentina played the Messi card. Like, nah, we'll wipe out everything you just did. Because they scored 3 times late. And they pulled off one of the wildest comebacks I've ever seen. And here's the thing. You can look at that 2 ways. One, Argentina looked vulnerable the entire time. They did. They conceded a lot of chances. And they have been pushed. And they have needed the drama. Or Argentina is terrifying because they refuse to die. They refuse. Every time it looks like one of these teams in this knockout round have them beat, they come back from the dead like the Undertaker, because tournament football is not about being perfect. It's about surviving. Jim Valvano used to say this back in the day, ladies and gentlemen. God rest him. Survive and advance. That's all you need to do. It doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be dominant. No, you just have to survive and advance. And that is what Argentina is doing. And now for their opponent, Switzerland. Well, Switzerland, how you doing? Didn't know you'd be this far in the tournament, to be honest with you. But they were in Group B against Canada, Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Qatar. And they opened up with a 1-1 draw against Qatar, which isn't ideal when Qatar had never won a World Cup game at that point, and you just gave them the one game in their entire country's history, very short history, I might add, in the World Cup, where they didn't lose in 90 minutes. You want to start with 3 points, but they did what Switzerland often does. They stayed calm, even though they drew with them 1-1. And then they come out and they beat Bosnia and Herzegovina as they should. 4-1, attacking with confidence. They reminded that Switzerland can do more than just defend. And they beat Canada 2-1. And that was a massive result, especially against a host nation, because Switzerland got through the group looking balanced, experienced, and they took the home field advantage away from Canada. Because if Canada wins that game, Canada is playing in Canada at least until the quarterfinals. But that didn't happen. So in the round of 32, Switzerland gets paired up with Algeria. Clean, a controlled, professional win, 2-0. And then comes the round of 16. And this game was tough to call because they're playing a Colombia team who their crowds were just traveling with them well. They were playing good football. And, the game, honestly, it went how I would expect it, how many would have expected it. It went 0-0. It went to a draw. You go into penalties, and you beat Colombia on penalties, and that is, Switzerland in a sentence. They're not flashy. They're not always, the most fun team to watch, but they're incredibly hard to just get them to go away, okay? If you are a big brother, Switzerland is the little brother who you cannot get them out of your room. They are just going to keep annoying you and hanging around. And if they find a way to beat you, they're going to. And this is the first time, and, good on them. First time in 70 plus years, I believe, that Switzerland has reached the quarterfinal of a World Cup. And that's history. And that's good on them for doing that. And they did that being exactly who they are. Organized, disciplined, tough, and a calm under pressure team. And they're a team that nobody talks about until they're still hanging around, and your favorite team is already home and or you have to play them. But that's who they are. And what is their reward for hanging around and eliminating a very tough Colombian team who I think many had pegged as making a deeper run, past and going into the quarterfinals. But ultimately, penalties are what penalties are. The best team doesn't always win. But now we have Argentina versus Switzerland. And here's my prediction. This whole matchup's going to be about rhythm. And I think Argentina, quite frankly, they want moments of magic, while Switzerland's going to want structure and discipline and to hold off that Argentina team from getting any shred of confidence. And I would if I were them. But Argentina's going to want Messi and company to find pockets of space. Switzerland's going to want to close those pockets before they become problems. If you're Argentina, you want to score early, and Switzerland has to open up, and that favors Argentina heavily because if Switzerland can keep this game scoreless into the second half, this will become dangerous. But Argentina has already had 2 straight dramatic knockout wins, and at some point, the emotional gas tank is going to run dry, but I don't think it's this game. The danger of Argentina is more frustration, and Switzerland, trust me, they are built to frustrate. Just ask Colombia. They were frustrated in that game. The danger of Switzerland is that they can play perfect defensive in a game for 84 minutes, and Argentina is just looking for that one moment that can ruin the whole plan. And I think Switzerland's going to try to keep it close, but I think if you're Argentina and you have Lionel Messi, and this is probably his last World Cup, let's be fair. Given his age, this might be his last World Cup run too. You're seeing multiple greats. This is a tournament filled with great players on their last hurrahs with their teams. We've already seen Luka Modric take his final bow. We just saw Cristiano Ronaldo take his final bow. Lionel Messi at some point is going to take his final bow in this tournament here in America. But it's not going to be this game because it's going to be Argentina. And Switzerland, as much as I am shocked as everybody else is that they've made it this far to the quarterfinal, and tip of the hat to them, but this is where, for me, the train is going to stop. I have Argentina 3-0. 3-0. I have Argentina scoring early in the second half. Coming into the second half, 1-0, and then scoring early and then getting a late one. That would give us England versus Argentina in the semifinal, which historically and emotionally and dramatically is basically, the World Cup basically telling everybody, hey, let's ruin everyone's blood pressure in Argentina and England for 90 minutes. So that's what my projected semifinal is. I think it's France versus Spain. I think it's England versus Argentina. And France and Spain is a heavyweight fight. Think Tyson Holyfield. Someone's going to get their ear ripped off in that match because France has power, pace, and individual brilliance. Spain has control, technique, and can slowly suffocate you. England versus Argentina, that's pure theater. England is trying to finally take that next step and get to a final. Argentina will be trying to repeat with Messi hanging around like that final boss in a video game where just when you think you got them beat, health bar, re-engaged. If I had to pick finalists right now, I can't, and I'm not going to, because that's going to be another video, quite frankly. And, predicting anything right now I think would be too hot of a take. And I don't like doing complete hot takes. I really don't. But, here's my final thoughts on this. The thing about the World Cup is every team left right now, they have a great story. France looks like a machine. Morocco looks like they are fearless underdogs that, forgot it was an underdog, which is what you want out of Morocco. Spain, they look like Spain. And the fact that Spain looks like Spain should be in the back of every one of these teams going into their current matchups. Like, man, I hope I don't have to see them in the semis or I don't have to see them in the final. Because if Spain gets to a final, that's going to be a problem. Belgium, they look like a team that's trying to squeeze one more run out of that golden generation, and so far they have. England, oh man, England, you look like, I have to say that, I have to tip my hat to England because your team looks like they can finally be tough enough to handle the chaos and to make sure that all of you don't end up in the emergency room hyperventilating during a matchup finally. Because if you're in a room with English fans during a knockout stage in a World Cup, you will suffocate because they will breathe all of the air out of the room. They will be breathing so fast. Norway, man, this looks like a dream story. This is the hipster pick for everyone on Earth. If Norway wins this World Cup, what joy you are going to see on those players' faces, on that country's face, because no one thought they would make it this far. I mean, they didn't even I don't believe they qualified for the last World Cup. I think they just missed out. And now Holland is leading them into a quarterfinal against a tough English team. This is going to be fun to watch. Row on Norway. And then you have Argentina, and they look great. They look like a good defending champion. They refuse to go away. No matter how many times someone has sucker punched them or given them a black eye, they've gotten off the canvas, to make a metaphor here, and they have punched back, and they can punch back a hell of a lot harder than you can. Switzerland looks like the team nobody wants to play, though, because they make every game look like a tax audit, don't they? They look like they're sitting down, they're making you uncomfortable because they're looking at every little nook and cranny of where you've kept something. And me, I'm just here as a useless sports guru, sitting behind this microphone, confidently predicting the future despite having absolutely no legal, scientific, or spiritual authority to do so. And also, as much as I hate gas bagging, I'm probably gas bagging now. Hey, will I be right? Nah, probably not. Will that stop me? Hell no. And that's the beauty of sports, man. We watch, we argue, we overreact, we predict, we go along with everything, and we're going to do it again the next day. But hey, speaking of the next day, thanks for hanging out with me on another episode of Dan Knows Everything About Sports. Even though I probably don't. Remember, I don't actually owe everything, but I just say it confidently enough that maybe sometimes you'll start believing me. In the comments section below, I want to hear from you. Who moves on to the semis? Who's it going to be? Let me know. Who you pulling for? Are you mad? Is your team not even involved? And if you don't know the rules of football or soccer, whatever you want to call it, hey, let me know. I'll explain it to you. And if you hit me with that moronic view of quit calling it soccer, you typical American, all I have to say to you is we didn't invent that word. The English did. You blame the Brits for the term soccer. Stop blaming Americans for it. But if you've enjoyed the show, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, leave a review, and tell fellow sports fans that there's a guy on the internet making bold, maybe somewhat moronic, maybe even tenderly loving predictions with absolutely zero guarantees. And if every single one of my picks is wrong, then we'll agree in the next episode that it didn't happen. But hey, until then, keep watching, keep listening, and keep debating. I never said I was right. All I said was I try to know everything, even though I don't. See you next time here on Dan Knows Everything About Sports.